Hello, good evening, and welcome. Now, you see, because you watched this show and somehow because you nominated it, we've been nominated for an award. So if you still want to see the show go further to win the award, the number is 1446, and you text KWAW 1446, and who knows, we might present you with an award. But today, the youth employment rate in Ghana currently stands at 12.9%. As per the 2010, 2010 population census. Over the last decade, various governments have designed programs targeted at creating jobs for the youth program, including the National Youth Employment Programs, now the Ghana Youth Employment and Entrepreneurial Development Agency, GIDA, among others, have been geared towards reducing youth employment. But the question is, do these programs create jobs which are sustainable? How can we as a country help reduce unemployment amongst the youth? I have with me Dr. William Boateng of the Economics Department in the University of Ghana. My name is Nana Sakwao. This is PM Express, and when we come back, we are talking. And you know something? This issue, let me clarify this thing, because we have an issue where if you raise any problem, we seem to think it's we're talking about the government. No, this is a persistent issue that has cut across all government and including all the continent. And I hear Rwanda's last census of unemployment was in 2006. So even we are mourning about 2010. We are better off than them. So as we discuss, please, my viewers, it is a general discussion, and we don't need to tarnish any particular individual. We're coming straight back. Hello, and today the discussion is about job creation, something which is extremely vital in any developing nation is to create jobs. Because if you leave too many idle hands roaming about, and these idle hands are normally, the youthful, exuberant age, they can, the devil can find work for them, and we don't want that. But have we paid attention to job creation? Indeed. Our last census, which was in 2010, said that 12.9% of the youth was unemployed. 2010. We're now in 2013. What does the record say now? Are we more or less? But with me to discuss this issue is Dr. William Boateng from the Economics Department in the University of Ghana. Doc, welcome.
Thank you, boss.
Doc, it's amazing, but as of 2010, statistics say that 12.9% of the population of the youth was unemployed. But we're in 2013. Do you know by any chance this figure has dropped or gone up, or we're still about the same?
Well, it's difficult to know what is happening currently because, as you said, data on unemployment dates back to 2010 and is the population census. And let me also say that we get employment data from various sources. Mm-hmm. One of them is population census, one of them is household surveys, and in Ghana we talk about the Ghana Living Standards Survey. Quick, as it's called, welfare indicators questionnaire, and other surveys. But to get a very comprehensive indicators of labor statistics, you need to conduct what we call a labor force survey. And to tell you, Ghana has never had labor force survey since our birth in 1957. And that shows that we haven't actually paid the kind of attention that we need. If you take population census, so many models are competing for space. And therefore, you may not be able to ask enough questions to be able to get enough statistics to answer questions bordering on in the labor market. Mm-hmm. If you take the GLSS, we have employment model, and we have so many models, the health and so on. So you see all models are competing for space. But if you take labor force survey, it means that you are focusing on trying to find out what is happening as far as employment, wages, and so on are concerned. And that one, we haven't had that before. So we normally rely on population census and other household surveys. And I think to make it clear, it's not only Ghana that is lacking in terms of data. In most African countries, Kenya dates back to 2009, their population census. Botswana is about 2006. The last labor force survey that they had is 2006. Liberia is doing quite well. They had one in 2007, and the last one was 2010, and I'm sure they will do one very soon. So you ask yourself, how is it that in the US, in other advanced countries, they are able to produce employment data almost every year and so on? They do labor force survey. And of course, they have the institutions and so on. So every year, they have the questionnaires go out and people answer. And of course, these economies are more formalized. If somebody is working, he is engaged by somebody who is paying that person. So it's quite easy to be able to send out questionnaires to get information on them. But in Ghana, informality is the norm. The informal sector in 2010 is 86.2% of people working in the informal sector. The formal sector, which is the public and the private formal, accounts for the 13.8%. So if you want to get data on employment, then we need to go to the field and collect. And it's not difficult to do that. Every year you can do it. It's just a sample. And if your sampling method is correct, you should be able to get something which is close to reality. So lack of data on employment is an indication of the kind of attention that we pay to employment issues.
I'm going to take a quick break here. The budget this year is focusing on job creation. So we'll come back and find out from Doctor. Without this data, how many jobs do you create? What jobs do you create? And where do you create the jobs? We're coming back. Hello, welcome back. And the discussion is focusing on job creation. And just before we went on the break, Doc explained to us that as a nation, as a continent, we don't like data collection. And especially when it comes to the labor force, we haven't got that data there. So then my question to him was, since we don't have the data, and the last one was done in 2010, which says that 12.9% of us was unemployed. If you are going to create jobs in 2013, do you add the population increase and assume that it's still 12.9? And indeed, where and what job are you going to create for that gap? But the Doc, before you even answer that, I just want to find, when they say somebody is unemployed, I mean, if I'm selling coconut or if I'm a shoe shine boy and I'm going and I'm coming, am I also unemployed, or do I always have to wear a suit and tie to be employed? Who is unemployed?
Well, I think I'm happy for the question because I think everybody talks about unemployment is a very big issue in Ghana and so on and so forth. Not only in Ghana, even on the continent, I have met big men who say unemployment and so on. When we say unemployment, as the concept is, it has three main elements. The first one is that the person must be jobless. In other words, the person doesn't have any job.
Okay.
When you say the person have any job, the person is not working for pay in cash or in kind. The person must be available for work. In other words, the person is not in school, full-time schooling. And therefore, if you offer him that kind of job, the person will not be able to do. So the person must be available for work. And the person must be seen as actively looking for work.
Okay.
So when we say unemployment, and you tell me, well, I'm not working, and I'm sitting at home doing nothing, then we ask you, have you made any effort to look for work? You say, no. I mean, there are no jobs, so why should I bother? It means you are not unemployed. You can't be part of the unemployed. In labor parlance, we will call you a discouraged worker. And that is why when you look at unemployment rate in Ghana as of 2010, we talk at 12.9% for the youth, but the adult 15 years and above is 5.8%. Anytime you mention it, people say, Tesca Survey, they are not collecting the data well and so on. 5.8% is correct. It's accurate. It's correct. But it's because of one or two factors that we need to look at. The first thing is that if we say somebody is unemployed, the person is not working, available for work and looking for work. Now, in our part of the world, if you are not working and you are looking for work and you are not getting it, can you continue to look for work for 1 year? No. You may want to have something to do. You may decide to go and sell something on the street. The moment you engage in some economic activity for pay in cash or in kind, you are no more unemployed. And that is what the concept says. Okay. And therefore, we have to understand the concept before we apply the concept. And that is why in Africa, you can, and I did a paper which I partitioned Africa into two. We have the some Southern African countries in the northern part of Africa. Then we have those in the middle. If you go to South Africa, unemployment rate is about 25%. Why? Because the economy is more formalized. If you look for work and you're not getting it, you can't just take a table and go and put it somewhere and say, I'm selling. Because the economy is more formalized. You go to UK and you are unemployed, you can't just go and sell just on the street, just like that, because it's more formalized. Mm-hmm. So when we say unemployment in these countries, we mean unemployment. Apart from that, in these countries, there are social policies, social intervention. I'm sure you know, if you are unemployed, you get it, as we call it, the social. Yes. So you need to register to be able to qualify for that social. As soon as you get a job, then you move away. Mm-hmm. These are the unemployment insurance, unemployment benefit. So even as you look for work and you are not getting, you have that opportunity to get something to live on. Mm-hmm. But in our part of the world, you don't have that. And therefore, if you remain unemployed for some time and it's not coming, you have to get something to do. And that is why we have a lot of people in what we call the informal economy or informal sector. Mm-hmm. And if you take the statistics, 86.2% of people working are working in the informal sector. So that type of employment is employment. But except that we need to look at that area and see how best we can help them to also earn something decent. Mm-hmm. So that is the issue. So to say somebody is unemployed, the person must be jobless, available for work, and the person is seeking. And that is what we mean by unemployment. If a person is employed, and I think I need to also clarify this, job creation, employment generation, they are the same and different at the same time. They are the same, but they are different in some instances.
And job creation and?
When you say job, and you say employment,
okay.
In some jurisdictions, they are the same. Mm-hmm. In some jurisdictions, they are different. Now, when we say job or employment in advanced countries, if somebody has a job, that person has an employer. Mm-hmm. So there is that employer-employee relationship. Mm-hmm. Because in those economies, they are more formalized. So somebody employs you and pay you. And even if you employ yourself, you are there as an employee, and therefore you pay yourself, you move yourself from the company, as we always say. Mm-hmm. Therefore, you are an employee, so there is that kind of relationship. So we have many people in wage employment. If you come to our part of the world, you can have a job, but you don't have an employer. Let me give you an example. Multi TV has asked me to be here to talk about employment. When I finish and you say, well, talking about employment for 1 hour, I'm going to give you 10 cedis. I don't think you are my employer.
No.
No, you've engaged me for that period. So I am just somebody you have just engaged, but I'm doing a job. So when we say employment, we need to differentiate it from job in some respect. So employment becomes a job if that job is permanent, or at least it can last for about 6 months or 1 year. Then you can see the person is employed, and you have that kind of employer-employee relationship. But if you engage somebody for about an hour, that person goes, the person has worked. That was a job that the person did, and the person was paid. but then there's no employer. So when we say job creation, we need to be clear on what kind of job we are creating. Remember, if government embark on road construction from here to Cape Coast, the road construction will generate some kind of employment, or let's say some kind of job. Let me put that to some kind of job, because while they are constructing, you find people coming around to sell and so on. So if the road construction is not there, you will need to get people to come and sell oranges, let's say kenke and so on. So that person sells that, and that person has a job. But is that the kind of job we are looking for? So that is what we have to ask ourselves. If the government decides to construct houses, as we are told, 5,000 houses, is going to create job at the time of the project, because some masons are going to be engaged, you have carpenters engaged, and so on and so forth, those who are going to carry the mortar and so on. But then that kind of job that they are doing, is it the kind of job that we want to create? Because that person is not going to pay social security. That person just get a job, and at the end of the day, the person has to look for another type of job. So to be able to say that we are creating job, and as the ILO normally use the word decent job, we need to look at the private formal sector, where the economy is expanded. You get people to set up enterprises and engage people for a period of time, pay their social security, and that is what will make the person have a very decent life. So job creation, excellent. If you say job creation in UK or in US, then I know that you are going to create a job that will last for more than 1 year, where the person is going to pay tax, the person will have the social security, and so on. But when we say job creation in our part of the continent, we need to clarify as to whether we are looking for temporary jobs or permanent jobs.
So without our statistics, if we hear we're going to create jobs, then how and where and what jobs, do you create to fill what vacuum?
Well, it's quite interesting, and I think this is not the first time we are hearing that the budget is going to create jobs. I mean, in the 90s, 2000, and so on, so job creation and so on. But one thing that I always worry about is the fact that we don't take interest in research to be able to know where the problem is. We always get people talk, hey, we are unemployed, and this and that. And I can tell you, somebody will say, I'm unemployed, but the person is working. Let me be controversial. I think we have I'm told we have what we call unemployed association graduates, something. I always get that association of Ghana. Unemployment is not permanent to have an association. I always have a problem. Unemployment is not permanent to have an association. If you go deep, you find that some of the people who are saying they are members may be doing some work somewhere, but they don't like the kind of work that they are doing, because they are looking for work in the bank, they are looking for work in the ministries, they are looking for work elsewhere. So long as they are not getting that kind of work, and even if they are teaching in a private school, they think they are unemployed. But so long as you are working, you cannot call yourself unemployed. Maybe you are not happy with the work that you are doing.
Or not getting enough money.
I don't think I'm so happy with the job that I think if President Mahama increased my salary by even 10% now, I'll be very happy. So everybody will want to get more. So then if that is what we are going to use to say unemployed, then everybody
will be unemployed.
I heard the MPs are also asking for, so they are also unemployed. But that is not what we mean by that. So if we don't get the concept, conduct research into it, have data, track the trend, we will not be able to know where the problem is. So if you ask, who are we creating the jobs for? What is even the educational level of the people, the human capital? If you go to the population census, you realize that people are complaining, there are no jobs and so on. You can create job, or you can generate employment, but you will not have people to fit in. Because the statistics will tell you that only 3% of people in Ghana in 2010 who were 15 years and above had university education or better. If you look at the population census, less than 500,000 people in Ghana in 2010, that is prior to the census, had bachelor's, master's, PhD.
500,000.
Less than 500,000. And that the figures are there. Anytime I mention the figure, where did you get the figure from? The moment you show it to him, you say they are there. Many of us, and the chunk of our people, have had no education or basic education.
I mean, 500 is very small.
Yes, and I can open it and give you the actual figure. You may think, oh, Legon is turning out this number, this is turning out, but sometimes we have to be very careful about numbers. That will be 500,000 is small relative to our population.
Yes.
But 500,000 sitting there is big. So if you have 500,000 people, and all these people, I can tell you, most of them are working. So if you create some kind of job for these people, you may not get people to fit in because many of them have had only basic education or no education. And I can tell you 28.5% of the working age population after 2010 have had no education at all. 28.5%. And you have more than 40% with up to basic education. And remember, in Ghana, and if you are looking at private formal sector, the minimum qualification to be able to get into the formal sector is SSC. To get into the police, you need your SHS certificate. And even that one, you need your maths and your English. If you get into any private formal sector, that is supposed to be the basic. If you want to go into area of maybe a cleaner and so on and so forth, and how many cleaners do you also need? That will take
even that you need your basic.
Exactly. So you can see
that 28% is automatically out.
Yes, no, unless you want people who don't have, education. So, and these people will only have the informal sector as the place to go. So you need to understand the dynamics, the data, the composition, and so on. So when you say you are creating jobs or you are generating employment, then you will know the people that you are looking for. I always laugh when I'm teaching employment. I use two scenarios. I said in 2001, when MPP won power, you had people going to the
ministries.
Not the ministries, where President Kufuor lives. I didn't say, but I use it as a joke. With tie and so on, we are coming for, because you said, oh, when you come, you create jobs. So I asked myself, well, if at that time he said, I have so many schools that I need teachers. These people have not had education. Maybe they were shoeshine boys and so on. They cannot fit in. So I added in 2009, perhaps it also happened when President Mills won the election. Maybe people also went there because they thought that is, but you need the education. So there are two angles to it. You need to know the human capital composition of the labor force, and you have to know the kind of job that you need to create. Unless you are saying that you are creating any job, whether temporary or permanent, then you don't need to look at who is this, who is that, and so on. So we need to look at the research component of our policy. Otherwise, we'll always have problems.
Wow, that's been an education. So then, with the national youth, social intervention, youth in this, youth in that. So what would that fall under then? I mean, what is a temporary job or a stepping stone job? What would that fall under?
Well, I'm still struggling to understand what you're talking about. Especially the youth employment program is now GIDA and so on. I ask myself, is it part of the public sector employment? Because if GIDA is engaging 400,000 people, and I know public sector workers in total is not up to 600,000. Even if it is 600,000, that is teachers, police, everybody, 600,000. And we've engaged 400,000 people under GIDA. Are they public sector workers? Are we paying their social security? So is the government engaged in informal employment? We have to ask these questions. Can we come up with strategies to strengthen the existing institutions, to train people? If the existing institutions have certain things that they are not able to meet their target and objectives, can we help them? Because I ask myself, the kind of support that we give to some of these special projects, if we give half of it to existing institutions, vocational and technical training, we have NVTI. And NVTI has been with us for a long time. I think they are just across the road. And you go there and the tools, the equipment they are using are obsolete and so on. But we create a project and we give them the support and so on, but we don't know whether it is part of public sector employment. So I think we need to be clear on what we are doing. Because if you are engaging somebody, you train the person exits and comes back, or the person exits and also enter into unemployment. What are we doing? So we don't just have to come up with projects. And so we need to understand the dynamics. We need to understand the problem, the challenge, so that we can have a holistic solution to some of these things. Because as you said, 12.9% of the youth being unemployed. If you look at the actual figure, it may not be as big as we are talking about. So it means, what do we do to absorb them? And why is it that we have only 12.9%? What about the chunk of people who are in informal employment? Because 12.9 will not capture those who are selling on the street. No. Because those who are selling on the street, the statistics will tell you that they are working. Mm-hmm. But that kind of work is not the best. So then can we say that we have to come up with strategies that will absorb those who are unemployed and those who are even working, but the kind of work they are doing is vulnerable, as the ILO puts it, it's vulnerable employment, or they are working poor. So we need to put all these things in perspective. Otherwise, we'll come up and say, well, we are creating jobs, but we'll be throwing money into the drain.
Doc, since you are in employment, I mean, is there a deliberate plan to say, look, we're going to take maybe 400,000 people and then train them to become carpenters or train them to become gas pipe welders, since gas is coming, or oil drill welders or something, and then have that sort of labor force ready? I mean, is there any deliberate ploy to gear a section of the population towards some sort of job that's going to come?
Remember, employment is not an end in itself. Employment is a function of how the economy operates. As I always say in the class, I said, I will not employ you because you are handsome. I don't think Multi TV employed you because you are handsome. They employed you because you have skill to deliver something. So the most important thing to Multi TV is the service that you are rendering. That is the most important thing. Mm. So it is not just gathering people and say, we are training you to be carpenters. When you train them and then they come out and they can't get wood to work with, what have you done? If you train people to be masons and then the economy is not expanding in the housing sector, will they get employment? So it must be something we look at holistically. Mm-hmm. So we don't just have to panic. We have to understand, and I will keep saying that we have to understand the issues quite critically. So deliberate policy must be anchored on research, on data, on what we want to do. And I keep saying, and I thought I could leave this to the tail end of our discussion. As a country, I don't think we know where we are going over the next 20 years. I don't think you know, and I don't know either. Because I expect that as a country, we need to have a blueprint. Mm-hmm. And the blueprint will tell us where we are going. Of course, I'm sure, as a person, you know that over the next 5 or 10 years, this is where I want to be. And therefore, everything that you do, you have that in mind and work towards that. We have to have the same thing as a country. We are training our students. We have basic education, secondary education, tertiary education. We have the polytechnics, we have the universities, and so on. We are training to meet the manpower needs of the economy. But what kind of manpower does the economy need? We don't know. It will be based on the blueprint that the country has. Maybe 10, 20 years. Within the next 20 years, Ghanaians, and here it is not a government, Ghanaians have brainstormed and said, within the next 20 years, we have to change the composition of our economy for manufacturing to be the lead. And I always use manufacturing as the best way of creating employment, because research has shown that the absorption rate, labor absorption rate of manufacturing and agriculture is higher than any other sector.
Well, Doc, let me stop you here. I'm going to take a break, but before, on that manufacturing, I was just reading through, and in 1960, South Korea had a per capita income of $79. As of 2012, they're raising to $32,000 because of manufacturing. We're coming back. Hello and welcome back. And we're talking about some of the challenges facing the developing world and Ghana with regards to job creation or making jobs or getting people to work. And then just before one of the break, a doctor mentioned manufacturing. Now, let me just read a little bit here for you. And it says, in 1960, its gross domestic, this is South Korea, the gross domestic product per capita was $79, lower than most Latin American and some sub-Saharan African countries. The growth of the industrial sector was the principal stimulus to economic development. In 1986, manufacturing industries accounted for approximately 30% of the gross domestic product and 25% of the workforce, benefiting from strong domestic encouragement and foreign aid. Seoul's industrialists introduced modern technologies into outmoded or newly built factories at a rapid pace, increasing the production of commodities, especially those for sale in foreign markets, and plowed the proceeds back into further industrial expansion. As a result, industry altered the country's landscape and drawing millions of laborers into urban manufacturing centers. Deliberate plan there. Doc, and you're talking about manufacturing. And, how did they do it and how come we can do it? I mean, what was the plan?
Well, the first thing is to identify the opportunities. And, of course, they realize that they have competitive and comparative advantage as far as manufacturing is concerned. Mm-hmm. And they said this is where we want to go. And therefore, a deliberate attempt to propel manufacturing to lead the economy. And if you have, and it's based on plan. And it's not only South Korea that did that, Malaysia, Singapore, and so on. I mean, they said this is where we want to go. And therefore, all sectors should come on board. In that regard, their infrastructure development will be geared towards pushing manufacturing. Their human capital development, education, will be geared towards pushing manufacturing. Their financial policies, monetary policies, setting up development banks to be able to provide affordable finance to those enterprises that were going to produce, so that they can have that kind of leeway to be able to produce at a reduced cost. Competition, do not allow anything to come in and so on. So if you have that kind of deliberate policy, you by all means get there. And that is what they did, and now they are there. So I think that is something that we as a country need to learn. Of course, they will have certain things that we may not be able to have because of where they are. Asia is quite big. You also need to have some kind of advantage in terms of countries that you are close to, and so on and so forth. But then we still have to look at certain things that we can learn from them. And as I was saying, if manufacturing is what we need to go, what kind of industries are we going to identify? So if you are going to identify, let's say, pharmaceutical, Ghana, maybe we think that pharmaceutical industry is where we have the advantage, then we identify them. Textile, if textile is where we have the advantage, we identify them. And others, let me be exaggerate, maybe automobile. If that is where we have the advantage, we identify them. And then we bring out strategies, interventions to support these industries in terms of our financial policies, in terms of our infrastructural development, so that we get them, and even our trade policies have some kind of way of protecting them, so that when they get on their feet, then you can allow them to compete. So if you don't have that deliberate kind of action, attempt to do some of these things, you always have problems. And we will come back every year and identify the problems and say we can solve it, but we will not be able to solve it. If you look at our infrastructure base, we are not strong. We don't have, I don't think we have any functional rail line apart from the one that we have from here to maybe Tema and few. I mean, if we know that we have to develop our infrastructure base, then we think through it. You cannot develop rail line within a year or two. It must be a long term. That is why we need to have a vision as a country, 30 years. Then we box them into 3 years. And how are we going to finance it? We identify source of finance, our monetary policy, our trade policy, our human capital development, everything will be geared towards that. And we know that is where we are going. Every 5 years, we look at it, we assess where we went wrong, we just patch it, and then where we did very well, we improve it, then we move on. And that will help us to be there. But depending on annual budget, to be able to do that, I think we will not be able to generate the employment that we want. I'm sure as I'm talking, somebody may say that, well, we have the GPRS, GPRS 1, GPRS 2, GSDA, and so on. I have a different view on that. I think we need to know how these are developed. I think they are developed at the maybe let me choose my words very carefully. Donors want us to come up with some kind of blueprint to be able to get some support for them. So if the GPRS one, something that the donors will look at and then identify. So it is not something that we have sat down as a country and see that this is where we want to go and we are doing that. And so you cannot equate that to the kind of long-term vision that we are talking about. And that one, at the end of the day, now we are talking about coming up with a new one. And a new one, what are the methods that we are going to use in coming up with a new one? I mean, it will be putting people together, sit down and write and so on. It doesn't fit into the kind of thing that the South Koreans, the Malaysia and so on, they did.
Let me go back to the budget. Now, they said they're going to tag it to performance. The new budget is going to be tagged to performance. So whereas first you just come and say, I need 20 CDs and you take it and go. This time you need to come and say, I need 20 CDs for 5 teachers. So next time when you come, you need to produce the 5 teachers and probably maybe the 100 children they thought, and then you get your money. I mean, would that, help a bit?
Well, I think from the way you've said it, I mean, just getting value for money. But as to how it will be done, I don't know how feasible it will be. I mean, I teach 400 students in my economic theory class. I teach about 300 students in my econometrics class. I teach about 10 students in my labor economics. So 1 year, will you be able to do that? I mean, if you are able to do that, then you are talking about getting value for money. Of course, the government has to also set up not to just pay people who are not doing anything. So that is also linking whatever government pays to the productivity that we are talking about. But as to how it will be done, I'm not too sure.
Look, you're talking about long-term projects, and let us identify something and just let us go there. With the way our democracy system works, it gives any particular leader probably 2 effective years to work, because you have 1 year to come, form a government, 1 year to work, and then you have another year to start making sure that I still stay in power. Even if not me, my next man will stay in power. With that 2-year window, I mean, are we stifling ourselves in terms of long-term development as a nation?
Yes, I think that is one of the major challenges when we want to look at it from that perspective. Then that means you need a leader who will not be worried about whether he will be out of power, so on, but will think how the economy will move and so on. I always get worried in Ghana when everything is tied to politics. And sometimes you switch on your radio and it's about NKP party, NY2 party, and this and that, and you have to switch on. And I normally go to the soccer because I like football. I mean, then I
listen to the soccer.
So even thinking about policy, you have to color it, and that is not the best. I'm sure that my colleagues in political science will be able to help as to how we can situate a long-term vision within the framework of the governance system that we have. In 2009 or 2010, a commission was set up. Constitutional Review Commission and so on and so forth. I said, well, this is good because we've practiced constitutional democracy from 1992, and I think we wanted to review it and see where we went wrong and touch it and so on. Can we do the same thing for the economy? We put together think tanks. Your role is to think and tell us where the country will be. Our comparative and competitive advantage, we are in West African sub-region. We have Cote d'Ivoire on our left. We have Nigeria just close by and so on. Which area do we think we can use to be able to move up and be seen? And therefore, the employment generation that we are talking about will come in. They go there, they think, and here, by partisan, regardless of your name, where you come from, whatever party.
If you can think,
whatever,
come and let's think.
That is, just come, let's think. You think, you bring it, and then we all move with it. It goes to Parliament, Parliament put a stamp there, and then every party that comes will take it, part of it, and then see where he can move. That will be a working document that will help. But then the Constitution also says that any president that comes to office within this period of time has to come up with a blueprint as to where, and you cannot, within 4 years, it's too short to be able to do. By the time you settle, you have 2 years gone. And it will be a cycle. It will come and go and come and go. I think as a country, we need to sit down and think through it. Because the best way to develop an economy is to provide jobs. And here I'm talking about sustainable jobs for the people.
Doc, we have 2 minutes, but there's also this assertion that, why should I create a job for you to come and do? Why can't you come through school and create your own job so that you can do it? I mean, so how do we...
You are talking about entrepreneurship, and I'm sure this thing had been, the first time I engaged somebody and said, well, entrepreneurship is excellent. I mean, you have to come out from school, think through business, have a business plan, write a proposal, set up something. But whether you can come up with something is a function of the economy. So if the economy is not, if you set up the production of mobile phones, somebody must buy before you be successful. But if people are not buying, you will not be successful. So the whole thing must be looked at in a holistic form. Not everybody is born as an entrepreneur. I think we have to also understand that all of us cannot be entrepreneurs. Some people must set up enterprises and employ others. But it should be a function of the economy. We have to know where the economy is going. And therefore, if I'm coming up with a business plan, I know where the economy will be in the next 10 years, then I target those opportunities. But if I don't know where the economy is going, I may fail along the way. And I think that is why I keep saying it's supposed to be a holistic kind of way of attacking the problem, rather than some kind of piecemeal entrepreneurship. We develop people, we train them in entrepreneurship, they come out, and then they fizzle out, and then we come back to square one.
The one thing that really amazes me is the statistics that you put up, because as far as we are concerned, everybody is going to school. They are all in school. So to have 28% who are not in school and 40% just up to basic level and just barely 3% with tertiary, I think we need to set another think tank to make sure that we get different figures for that. It's alarming.
I don't think we can sit in Accra and always think that, everybody is going to school. I think it's something that and the figure, it has improved. Let me put it that way. It has improved a bit. I have the figures here. In 2000, if you take 2000 population census, the working out of about 7.43 million people who were working all kinds of work, whether formal or informal and so on, 49.1% had no education in 2000. 49.1% of 7.43 in 2000. Now, in 2006, it declined to 35.2. So we are doing quite well. If you take something like university education, in 2000 it was 2.5, and in 2010 it's 3%. So you have to, and the figure, those with no education, that is those Ghanaians in 2010 who were 15 years and above, 28.5% out of the 15.21 million Ghanaians who were 15 years and above, 28.5% have had no education at all.
Wow.
47.8% have had up to basic education, that's JHS or middle school. Then 13.7% had secondary education, and then 7.2 have had, I call it secondary plus, let's say post-secondary nursing and so on. And then only 3% have had university education. This is the statistic that we had.
So I think if we are talking about job creation, look at these statistics and see what jobs you're bringing. Because if you create jobs for doctors, who's there to become a doctor? And if you create jobs for any technical or high-tech jobs, who is there to do it? I think we should all come together and really think through this thing holistically before we even decide to create any job whatsoever. Dr. William Babwating, Economics Department of University of Ghana. Doc, thank you very much.
Thank you, too.
And as I always say, tomorrow we'll be back to do it all over again. Thanks for watching.